for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. Israeli tanks and gunships targeted Hamas in Gaza in the heaviest night of bombardment in 3 weeks of fighting. And Israel is seeing a higher number of casualties as the fighting escalates, despite a U.S. push for a ceasefire. Chris Mitchell has the story.
The pounding of Gaza overnight, hitting key Hamas targets, followed the killing of 10 Israeli soldiers, 9 of them in 2 separate attacks inside Israel. The latest Israeli fatalities make it likely that Israel will push harder to dismantle the threat of Hamas, like the many terror infiltration tunnels here along the border, before it even considers a ceasefire. On Tuesday evening, Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, told the nation to prepare for a prolonged battle.
We will not complete the mission, we will not complete the operation without neutralizing the tunnels, the sole purpose of which is the destruction of our civilians and the killing of our children.
Surveys show that a big majority of Israelis support the war against Hamas. Intelligence Minister Yuval Steinitz told CBN News Israel wants a full Hamas disarmament.
We have to stop this suffering of Israelis and Palestinians in Gaza by demilitarizing Gaza and by ejecting or dismantling any terrorist organization that is operating from Gaza.
Israel targeted more than 70 Hamas terror sites overnight, including 2 command centers, 4 weapons storage sites hidden in mosques, and the full route of a terror tunnel shown in this IDF footage. Israel also hit Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh's house, as well as government buildings and the Hamas satellite TV station. Meanwhile, U.S. and European attempts to impose a ceasefire, led by Secretary of State John Kerry, have failed so far. The U.S. administration is angry about charges that Kerry is trying to rescue Hamas at Israel's expense.
We have strongly supported Israel's right to defend itself against rockets and tunnel attacks, and we've engaged together in sensitive negotiations. We will continue to do so, and will continue to set the record straight when anyone distorts the facts.
But Zvi Mazel, former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, says Israel is confused at the White House support for the Muslim Brotherhood, which includes Hamas.
Kerry started a kind of a matchmaking between Israel and Hamas and put Hamas and Israel on the same level. No, you cannot put a democratic state like Israel and the Islamic terroristic organizations Hamas on the same level. Absolutely not. America should be pro-Israeli and say it loudly.
Meanwhile, pressure is building not just on Israel as the Palestinian death toll grows, but also on the administration. Congress is asking hard questions about why Israel is pushed to stop defending itself from ongoing attacks. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Israeli-Gaza border.
The crisis in the Middle East apparently has triggered anti-Semitic vandalism in South Miami. Police discovered spray-painted swastikas and the word Hamas on the pillars of a synagogue Monday. And Saturday, a Jewish family left a service at their synagogue to find the words Hamas and Jew written on car windows. The 2 vehicles were also covered with eggs and smeared with cream cheese. Authorities are investigating who was behind the crimes.
America is accusing Russia of violating a key nuclear missile treaty. The U.S. says Russia tested a new ground-launched cruise missile, breaking the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The accusation comes as tension between Russia and the West continue to grow over the crisis in Ukraine. The European Union and the U.S. plan to announce new sanctions against Russia this week in the face of evidence that Russia has continued to assist separatist forces inside Ukraine.
Cleanup is underway after powerful storms wreaked havoc across much of the country. A rare tornado slammed the suburbs of Boston. It's the first time one has been reported in that part of the country in some 50 years. Other parts of the country were also hit hard. Revere, Massachusetts looks more like a war zone after a tornado tore through the city Monday. The storm carved out a 2-mile path of destruction, leaving behind scores of damaged buildings and cars, toppled trees, and more than a dozen homes left uninhabitable.
Devastation, never seen anything like it. I mean, 60 years, well, in the family for 6 years, grew up here.
We have no clothes, we have nothing. It's not supposed to happen here. It's not Oklahoma.
The National Weather Service said the rare tornado was an EF2 with a maximum wind speed of 120 miles per hour. Luckily, no one was killed.
Material stuff is material stuff, but people are people, and you can't replace people, so I'm glad everybody's okay.
From the East Coast to California, Mother Nature has left her mark, including unprecedented flooding and deadly lightning. People in central Kentucky are recovering from a powerful storm that barreled through the area, leaving behind injuries, damaged homes, and power outages.
Looks like a war zone to me. I've been in Vietnam and I haven't seen it as bad as this. It's the worst I've ever seen it over in this neighborhood.
A tornado was also reported in Connecticut, as well as this one in a cornfield on a farm in Colorado. One of at least 2 twisters that touched down in the Denver metro area Monday. In Nevada, heavy rains caused massive flooding, prompting road closures. Meanwhile, in Southern California, people are dealing with the aftermath of a freak strike of lightning at Venice Beach. 20-year-old Nick Fagnano was swimming in the water when he was killed by the bolt. More than a dozen others were injured.
It was an incredibly loud flash, like a bomb went off, and the thunder hit at the same time. So I knew it struck very close. So it was really scary.
Today, many are hoping for clearer skies and calmer weather.
Congress is finally addressing the Veterans Affairs healthcare scandal, introducing a bill to provide the department with up to $15 billion in emergency funding. The bipartisan legislation would provide $10 billion to contract care outside the VA, requiring the government to pay private doctors to treat veterans who are facing long wait times or live at least 40 miles from a VA facility. $5 billion would be for a VA to add doctors and establish 27 new health clinics around the nation.
Planes and tanks and guns are a cost of war. So is taking care of the men and women who use those weapons and who fight our battles.
Now, this bill needs to be approved by the House and the Senate. Congress is scheduled to leave for its 5-week summer recess this coming Thursday.
There is mixed reaction today to President Obama's nominee to the post of Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. Rabbi David Saperstein has spent his career in Washington focusing on social justice and religious freedom issues as an activist in the liberal reform branch of Judaism. Some religious freedom advocates are applauding the choice. National Association of Evangelicals President Leith Anderson said Saperstein will be a strong advocate for voice and religious freedom around the world, but not everyone is pleased. Saperstein is critical of the Supreme Court's Hobby Lobby decision, which allowed some companies to opt out of paying for contraception under Obamacare for religious reasons. In a statement, the Catholic Association said Saperstein favors fining family business owners for their religious beliefs and forcing Americans into complicity with abortion. The Ambassador for Religious Freedom monitors and speaks out on religious freedom abuses worldwide. The State Department post was created by Congress back in 1998. If he is confirmed by the Senate, Rabbi Saperstein will be the first non-Christian to hold the job.
Joining us now for more is Isaac Six, Director of Advocacy for International Christian Concern, a religious freedom group. Isaac, you've heard the praise and criticism of Rabbi Saperstein. What's your opinion of his nomination?
Well, Ephraim, first, we're very excited that the position has finally been filled. It was empty for about 9 months, and we called on the president, along with a lot of other organizations, over the last 9 months to fill the position, to put someone there. The fact that it was empty for so long really indicates the priority that we give to international religious freedom issues at the State Department and from the White House. So we're excited to see it filled. Unfortunately, we don't really know if his position, if he'll use the role well. We don't know how he's going to utilize it. He is very experienced in Washington, D.C., so he does know how to get a lot of things done here. But really, we're just kind of waiting to see at this point if he'll be effective in that role, if he'll be given the authority in that role to actually address some of the major issues that are going on right now.
And talking about those major issues, Monday, the State Department released its 2013 report on international religious freedom. It shows more and more religious communities, particularly Christians, are being displaced. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Well, it's an annual report that the International Religious Freedom Office at State Department puts out. And while we're happy to see the report come out, again, there's so many other issues. The report does talk a lot about some of the countries where things are severe, but it also leaves a lot out, unfortunately. We also see that in that report, you have countries of particular concern, countries that are named because they commit especially egregious violations of religious freedom against religious communities and Christians. And there are several countries that continue to not make that list. Iraq is one, Syria, Nigeria, where we saw more Christians killed for their faith than in any other country last year. So there's some glaring holes, I think, in the report. And we really want to see not just those holes fixed, but we want to see action on top of the report. So we're very happy to see it released, but action needs to follow words.
Well, the report also deals with all religious minorities, but do you think their situations are equal to what's happening to Christians?
I think that depends on the region or the area or the situation that you're talking about. So there are a lot of variables with any given situation. We do know that Christians, though, face more persecution in more countries than any other faith. So that isn't disputed. That's well researched. The severity, though, just depends on the area that you're talking about. So, yeah, it really depends on the country.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Two leaders of a West Philadelphia mosque are accused of trying to enforce Sharia law by attempting to chop off a follower's hand with a machete. It happened after a morning prayer service. Police say they accused the man of stealing, and chopping off his hand was punishment. CBN News spoke with Robert Spencer, a noted authority on Islamic terrorism and the head of Jihad Watch.
With this being taught in the Quran and in Islamic law, it's very possible that this kind of thing is going on not just in this mosque, but in others around the country, and it's simply not reported because the person who undergoes the punishment is, of course, afraid and also may well be a believer in Islam and thus in the punishment itself, and thus not go to authorities. And, of course, the people who perpetrate the deed are not going to go to authorities either.
Now, this story has generated a lot of reaction on all sides since we posted it on our website. One viewer posted this comment: "Thank God for the constitutional separation of government from religion. Unless the First Amendment is repealed, no church, mosque, synagogue, or temple can impose its law on unwilling masses who are protected from theocratic oppression like these rogue mosque leaders attempted." We'd like to keep the conversation going. You can weigh in on our Facebook page or at cbnnews.com.
Coming up, tearing down the cross, how Chinese Christians are responding to a widespread crackdown against churches.
A September 11th steel cross can be displayed at the National Memorial and Museum. A federal appeals court rejected an atheist group's lawsuit to block the display of the crossbeams that were found among the World Trade Center's wreckage. The American Center for Law and Justice said the ruling represents a, quote, significant constitutional victory. The ACLJ filed an amicus brief in the case on behalf of more than 230,000 Americans who supported the display.
A campaign to repress Christianity is growing rapidly in one part of China. Christianity is growing rapidly in the Zhejiang province. Now authorities there have torn down or threatened to topple crosses at more than 130 churches. Some Christians are defying the government, but that's leading to more persecution. Caitlin Burke reports.
Today, a battered cross stands at the top of a one-roomed prayer hall in Zhejiang province, China. An act of defiance by a community of about 100 Christians. Last month, the Chinese government ordered demolition crews to bring the cross down from the top of the Wuxi Christian Church. But the members voted to re-erect it here.
If they come again to take down the cross or take it away, we have made another cross, and we will put it up again.
The community is facing the consequences of their defiance. Authorities have cut off water and electricity and are now making veiled threats against church members' jobs and their children's education. The believers remain unshaken.
From our perspective, the perspective of the believers, they don't just come here to tear down the churches or the crosses. They are after our religion. Why? Because everybody who believes in Jesus knows that, in the church, the cross is the most important Christian symbol. It's the symbol of the death of Jesus.
The local government says they're simply cracking down on building code violations. But church members say that excuse merely provides cover for the religious persecution. So far, the cross-toppling campaign has been limited to the one province, but it could soon spread to the rest of China.
The values of the cross lie in our hearts. It's unshakable. It cannot be torn down.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Up next, Jews are fleeing France. What's behind this modern-day exodus?
Well, Jews have lived in France for over 2,000 years, but now many of them are leaving.
Why? Because they're afraid of living any longer in a country they believe is turning against them. Dale Hurd brings us this shocking story from Paris.
In the suburbs of Paris, a Jewish family gathers to read the Torah. Soon, they will be gone. They're part of a growing number of French Jews who are leaving France because the future simply looks too dangerous. Before World War II, European Jews waited too long to leave, and then they were trapped. French Jews don't want to make the same mistake again. In January, demonstrators in Paris shouted, "We don't want Jews," and gave the Nazi salute. It was a chilling reminder of France's World War II past, when Jews were deported to concentration camps. This family agreed to be interviewed only if their identities were hidden because they fear a backlash from French society. In a few months, they'll leave for Israel. They told us they wanted to go when they could leave on their terms, instead of someday having to flee for their lives.
We're not really afraid, but seeing the murders last year in Toulouse and what happened at the Jewish Museum in Brussels, we're afraid for our children and what could happen to them, and think about it every day.
The mother in this Jewish family has already been called a dirty Jew by the neighbors. She's instructed her daughter how to slip her Star of David inside her blouse when she goes outside, and has told her sons to be careful about when they wear their kippahs.
They have worn the kippah since they were very young, but over the past few years, I have told them maybe it's better not to wear it sometimes.
There is a strong feeling inside the French Jewish community that it's time to leave.
Philippe Carcenti is deputy mayor in the city of Neuilly and a Jew.
You can't have a dinner, a conversation with a Jew without having this topic mentioned. Shall we stay or shall we leave?
There are only about 400,000 Jews in France, and they're outnumbered by Arabs and Muslims by perhaps 15 to 1 or more. And that gap is growing every day. There have been close to 8,000 anti-Semitic incidents in France since 2000, and every time Israel acts in self-defense against the Palestinians, the danger increases. France's Arab and Muslim citizens have staged large and more violent demonstrations, including one in which 200 Jews were trapped inside a synagogue. At a synagogue near Paris, Rabbi Michael Azoulay says the number of Jews coming to him for a certificate of Jewishness in order to go to Israel has gone way up in the past year.
It started around last July. We have had many requests from families, not just from our community, but from other communities in Paris. People who came to us and requested certificates for the Jewish agency in the hope of possibly going to Israel.
It's estimated that as many as 5,000 Jews could leave France this year. The exodus of the Jews is a disaster for the French government, which keeps condemning the anti-Semitic attacks, but cannot stop them.
Let me just emphasize, we do not live in an anti-Semitic country.
Dr. Richard Prosquier is past president of CRIF, France's National Association of Jews.
I do not accept the fact that France is an anti-Semitic country. France is not an anti-Semitic country. This government, the previous government, have absolutely no anti-Semitic ideas.
The French government is doing what it can, but it's difficult to do more because the problem is so overwhelming. The government cannot prevent every attack.
Jews do blame the French media for the rise in anti-Semitism because of the way it attacks Israel on a daily basis.
The media have been inciting against Israel and the Jews for more than a decade.
We are fed up with the image of Israel that is continuously repeating itself.
When you watch TV, when you listen to the radio, or when you read newspapers, you always feel hate message against Israel.
Not all French Jews are in danger, and not all Jews who are leaving France are doing it because of anti-Semitism. Some are leaving because of the bad economy. But 3 out of 4 say they're thinking about leaving, and 95% are worried about anti-Semitism.
Actually, we're concerned now that the government will not be able to set things right to stop the attacks, and that worries me.
French Jews now face a perfect storm, with a war in Gaza, growing numbers of French Muslims, and the growing popularity of the far-right National Front.
Jews are being insulted and threatened, not only by Muslims, but also by members of the far right and by leftists who hate Israel.
This family is looking forward to their new life in Israel, without persecution.
We will be able to breathe freely in Israel, and I will be happy to see my children live more freely as Jews there.
French leaders know that when Jews have to leave, it means the nation is sick.
Jews are a litmus test of what's going on. It's not only Jews who will leave the country, it's not only France who will go down the drain, it's not only Europe, it's the entire Western world, including the United States.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, Paris.
CBN is helping to restore sight to hundreds of people in Guatemala.
That's right. Through CBN's partnership with Operation Blessing, this project has been able to help nearly 300 people suffering from poor eyesight. Many of these people have limited access to medical care or don't earn enough to pay for a surgery. So CBN is an answer to prayer. These life-transforming surgeries also open up opportunity for CBN to share the gospel with patients and their families. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international. Well, that's going to do it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
And we want to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a terrific Tuesday.